Hey mama, today we are talking about induced labor tips. I have had 2 induced labors, one pretty recently, and I'm going to tell you about my top tips for making an induced labor as good an experience as possible. I'm Katie Huey-Harrison, founder and editor-in-chief of Undefining Motherhood. We're an educational site and community equipping you to do this mom thing your way. This is Branham. She's my guest today, and honestly, maybe a little bit more in the future, because here's the thing that I'm learning. Getting everything done on your to-do list with a new baby is hard. I'd forgotten how hard. And having a second kid on top of it, oh man. I like to tell myself that I'm Superwoman and I can just get everything done. But the reality that I'm learning is that none of us can do that. I sure can't. And filming these videos every week has been really tough. So this week I'm bringing her with me, and it's probably going to start happening more because that's the only way I can find to get all of this accomplished. I hope you enjoy watching her and hearing her coo, and sorry if she cries or freaks out in the middle of a video. Alright, so let's talk about induced labors. I have been induced for both of my children under very different circumstances, and the labors went very differently. So I'm actually going to tell both of those stories in the coming weeks. So if what you want is a walkthrough different things that labor can look like, especially after induction, although it could just be a labor story in general, watch those weeks as well. Click the subscribe button and you'll get notified when those weeks go live. So their stories were really different, but there were a couple of things that I did during both labors, or that I learned from the first and did during the second, that I really recommend to make it smoother and easier, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. So here are my top tips. Number 1, take a birthing class. You can do this at your hospital, your birthing center, online. You might have a doula who offers one. Whatever type of birthing class works best for you. I recommend this for all mothers who are planning to give birth, but I especially recommend this if you know that you're likely to be induced, because there are a lot of decisions that you're going to want to make. And when you're induced, a lot of us feel like some of our control has been taken away. Like, we wanted to go into labor on our own, spontaneously, and for whatever reason, that's not going to get to be our story, and it can make a lot of us really nervous. So if this is you, I want you to have the knowledge and information that you need to be able to make informed decisions throughout labor, to advocate for yourself, and to feel like you're controlling whatever you can. And a birth class is the best way to do this. Some of the information that I'm going to give you here is also information that you might get in a birth class, but my information is based on experience. A birth class's information is going to be based both on experience and also on a lot of research and knowledge as to what the different options are currently, so they're really up to date, and that's going to give you the best idea to prepare for induced labor the way that you want to be induced. Now, you might find that birth classes focus more on spontaneous labor. And so one thing that I really like is if you are doing a live in-person birth class, you're able to tell the instructor ahead of time, hey, I'm likely to be induced. Can we please make sure we cover that? And I did that with my birth class because I was close enough to my due date at the time of the birthing class that I knew my blood pressure is high, I might be developing preeclampsia, let's go ahead and prepare for induction. And the instructor was really able to cater a lot of the information to me. She still gave the other information for all the other families in the room, but it was really helpful to be able to ask specific questions of that instructor. So if you're able to do an in-person class, that can be a really great option, because if you're going in for an induction, likely you are going to be in a hospital setting, and so your hospital very likely does offer birthing classes that you can take. All right, my tip number 2. Learn about pain management options, which again, you can learn about in a birthing class, and decide exactly what you're comfortable with, because here's the unfortunate fact from everything I have been told and researched, although I don't have sources to cite for this one. Pitocin-induced contractions are supposed to be a lot worse and harder than typical contractions. Now, I have had both Pitocin-induced contractions and non-Pitocin-induced contractions. My hope was that I would actually be able to compare them and verify this claim, at least based on my experience. but they were 5 years apart, so it was really hard for me to tell. What I will say also is that my Pitocin-induced contractions were labor, traditional labor, and my non-Pitocin-induced contractions were actually back labor. So it was a very different kind of pain. So I really am not able to make that comparison. But I do know that most people who have been through both tend to say, yeah, the Pitocin ones are worse. And that is something that I was warned about by my medical staff in the hospital when I got Pitocin with my son. So what that means is you might be more prone to want pain management options if that's not something you were already planning on. So go ahead and find out in advance what those options are for you. Here are the ones that I have used. The first for me was an epidural. I waited until I was about 5 centimeters along to request an epidural. With my son, that worked out beautifully. With my daughter, not so much, because I actually labored so fast that there wasn't really much time for the epidural to take effect. We couldn't have guessed that. That was a fluke. But it is a limitation of epidurals. There are ways in which they can go wrong, although it's not common. And so I do like us to know, hey, there are things that can go wrong. What are our other options? Another really common option, but this depends on your comfort level and your care team, is actually a narcotic option. So fentanyl is often administered during labor, usually prior to the administration of an epidural. And usually, at least at the time of recording this video, it can be administered in up to 3 rounds. I will tell you based on my experience that that 3rd round is pretty useless. So if you are looking into pain management options, knowing that's a possibility to help you for a little while is great, but also knowing it's going to be short-lived and the efficacy is going to wane over time. So know what options your hospital provides. What is your doctor comfortable with? What is your midwife comfortable with? What are you comfortable with? And talk about those options ahead of time so that you have a plan and you know, hey, this is what I'm willing to do and this is what I'm not willing to do, because it's going to be different for everyone. Tip number 3. I really, really recommend ask your hospital in advance if they have wireless monitors. Get them and move, mama. Now, if you want to be hooked up to an epidural the entire time, the epidural and the Pitocin start at the same time, then that is fine. That is your call. You definitely don't need wireless monitors if that's you, because you're going to be in bed once you get the epidural. You can't feel your legs, and so you have to be in bed. But if you want to move early in labor, which is what I wanted to do, and what I recommend if you're even on the fence about when you might want an epidural, if you want one, I really suggest trying to get wireless monitors and move in the beginning of labor. And here's why. Sometimes people struggle with their labors stalling, and most of us really don't want to see this happen. Even if we're comfortable in bed with an epidural, we don't usually want to spend 2 days lying in a hospital bed with an epidural in our bodies. So to keep labor from stalling, one thing the evidence tells us we can do is to move our bodies, to help gravity help us get those cervixes open, dilated, and movement is absolutely key. Now, what kind of movement is going to depend on you and what is comfortable for you. For me, the best tool that I had was a birthing ball. Now, my labors were very different experiences and different kinds of pain, so I used it differently during each one. With my son, I put the birthing ball up on a high table in front of me, and I put my arms around it, and I danced with it while I bent over. Let me see if I can move a baby to kind of give you a visual here. So I was leaned over like this, hunched over with my arms up, swaying back and forth through the pain. And that was so helpful during my labor experience with my son. Then my husband just had a basic plain plastic massage tool that he would rub across the bottom of my back during contractions while I danced. And oh, it made such a difference. Now with this little one and back labor, the pain was very different. That would not have worked for me. I did not want a massage tool touching me during that labor. So what I did for Branham was I actually put the birthing ball on the floor. I leaned over onto my bed to hold myself for some stability, and then I actually physically bounced on the birthing ball, and that was the most useful thing I could do for pain relief during labor with her. So When you take your birthing class, you're going to learn about different labor tools and different things that you can do to cope with pain. If you have an interest in moving around during labor, getting those wireless monitors or talking to your doctor in advance about intermittent monitoring are really going to be your friend, because that's what allows you to get out of bed and move around. And that can be so helpful in preventing your labor from stalling and keeping it going quickly. Tip number 4, learn about your different tools. What tools are available? Again, you can get a lot of this information from a birthing class, and make sure you use some that you think are going to work for you. So we actually practiced, when I was not in labor, the dancing thing. That is what I did with my son. It felt so good when I was super pregnant that I thought it would feel good during labor, and it did. Now, when I was giving birth to this little one, that was not the right move for me. But what was nice was that I did have different tools that I could use. I had a birthing ball, I had a peanut ball, I had massage tools, I had essential oils for scent. For me, it was like an aromatherapy, calm me down sort of thing. Some people like to use it to ward off nausea, which can be really helpful, and some people actually use them for pain management. I don't know very much about that or how that works, but there's so many different options out there. So learn about the different techniques that you can use to manage that pain, to practice your breathing, to keep your pelvic floor as relaxed as possible. Hey, baby. And use those to your advantage during an induced labor. Okay, tip number 5, make a plan, a birth plan, yes, for what really matters to you, and share it with your support person or people and your medical team. So if you're going in for an induced labor, I recommend having your birth plan in hand. We have one in our Expecting and Organized planner that's a 1-page template, super easy to fill out. That's what I used with this little girl, and I just took it in and I handed it to the labor nurse before we ever got started with the induction process, and we talked through it. And so she knew ahead of time, it's not time for wireless monitors now, but I need to have those for you. You're gonna want a peanut ball, you're gonna want a birthing ball. She actually discovered that they were out of birthing balls. And so luckily I had one in my car that I had brought just in case, so my husband was able to go get that for me. This is what made me prepared for labor, that I had had these conversations with my nurse in advance, and she knew what I wanted and she knew what I didn't want. And that, my friend, made all the difference. Having your support person also knowing your preferences can be really helpful in case you are unable to easily communicate them yourself. Say you're contracting and in pain and you just want to point and grunt. That's fair. And someone else can help advocate for you if you've made it clear what you want. And I recommend a birth plan that has some flexibility, that recognizes we cannot control everything about our labor for every birthing person. But I especially recommend it for an induced labor because, again, we feel like we're losing control of one thing, so let's control the things that we can. Finally, my last tip for having an induced labor: know that your body is working and it's okay. The biggest complaint I hear from moms who go through induction and or C-sections is that they feel like their bodies are broken somehow. And we really need to talk about that. After 4 miscarriages, I definitely wondered if my body was broken and if it was going to be able to birth properly. Now, the inductions were completely different stories. With my son, it was because I had preeclampsia and it was a safety issue that I be induced. With my daughter, it was more elective. There were medical reasons to do it, but it kind of could have gone either way. And I preferred induction at that point because it was the path I knew and it felt comfortable to me. So I wanted to go ahead and get her out and know that she was here safely. But for a lot of us, this is not the plan. This is not what we wanted, and we can feel a lot of anger and resentment and frustration when we find out that we might need to be induced. If this is you, please know that it's okay. It's common to need to be induced, but also it's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be angry. The best thing you can do for yourself is control what you can so you can accept what you cannot. Don't feel like you have to be happy. Don't feel like you have to be like, yay, I'm being induced. If this was not your plan, it is completely okay to grieve the experience you wanted and to mourn that. But also, please know that you're gonna be fine. you're gonna do a great job. The fact that you are watching this video proves to me that you care, that you are taking control, that you are gonna do your very best, and that you are gonna be your own best advocate during this experience. I wish you the very, very, very best of luck, mama. If you want more tips to help you get ready for baby and be completely prepared, download our Getting Ready for Baby bundle. It has all of the tips you need on packing your hospital bag, getting your house ready for baby, setting up mama baby stations, and so much more. And if you've still got a few weeks left before your induction date, if you haven't yet, go ahead and start perineal massage, because that is going to help you as well. I'll drop a link to our perineal massage video in the description below, so you can click back and find that one if it's something that would benefit you. If you've still got 3 to 4 weeks before you plan to be induced, hop over there and go ahead and watch that so you can get started doing yet another thing to control what you can so that you can manage what you can't. Thanks so much for watching today, friend. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You say bye, Brandon? Bye!